Can you basically now reprocess foods to be hedonically pleasing, convenient, relatively inexpensive, but now basically using natural pathways to shut down hunger and in the process shut down the inflammation that obesity generates? The answer is yes.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Wellness Zone podcast. I'm Mary Perry, and I'm here with Dr. Barry Sears. And each week we dive into the science of wellness and metabolism and how nutrition is one of your most powerful tools in your quest for better health. So let's talk a little bit about ultra-processed foods. I mean, we know processed foods aren't good for us, but can you explain a little bit about what ultra-processed foods are?
Well, ultra-processed foods basically go to our basic human desires. Make something for me that's desirable to eat and incredibly cheap. Your prayers have been answered by the food industry. What we'll do, we'll take foods, and there's three components to foods: protein, carbohydrate, and fat. Now, protein's expensive, so we make an ultra-processed food saying, I want the least amount of protein in there, because I want to sell it at the lowest, make the highest profit. I also want to basically add simple sugars, like sucrose, glucose, fructose. They're cheap. And I want to basically add fat. That's dirt cheap. So the ideal processed food would be something composed really of simple sugars and fat and tastes good.
So all the foods we know we should be avoiding.
Yeah, but then something we add things to it and make it, shape it around, and all of a sudden a ding dong becomes basically the epitome of health. It's convenient, it's inexpensive, and it's very hedonically pleasing. Now, the trouble is you shut down your ability to sense appetite. Basically, your satiety mechanisms are being disrupted. So this explains now why we're basically seeing these accelerations in terms of obesity, even though the calorie intake hasn't changed that much.
So one of the things you said with processed foods is you're taking out the healthy components of vitamins and minerals and the protein. If you could add back in the protein, could you also be using ultra-processed foods to be healthy?
I think the answer is yes. No, I'll rephrase that. I don't think the answer is yes. I know the answer is yes, because we've done that. Again, this is now going back to understanding how our diet and how the components in our diet affect our satiety. Now, again, ultra-processed foods are designed to make you hungry. They've been wildly successful. The drug industry has found a way to counteract that by giving you injectable drugs of the hormone that shuts down hunger. Now, between those two extremes, which are pretty wide, is there a middle ground? Can you basically now reprocess foods to be hedonically pleasing, convenient, relatively inexpensive, but now basically using natural pathways to shut down hunger and in the process shut down the inflammation that obesity generates? And the answer is yes. This is what we started at Zone Labs about 10 years ago. Can we construct foods people like to eat that have a strong ability to decrease hunger? And those we call the zone of foods. Why? Yes, they're constructed to meet the guidelines, the macronutrient guidelines of the zone diet. They're convenient, they're desirable, they're easy to clean up. Now, we did our first experiments we published back in 2017, and we demonstrated that using these foods, initially we're using pastas and breakfast cereals, could dramatically change basically the dynamics of hunger. And we basically did our controlled experiments, and we found that the people eating the zone foods, same number of calories as people eating the non-zone food varieties, they were losing more fat and gaining lean body mass, even though they were restricting their calories. This is the first data ever demonstrated in humans that you could basically reduce calories, lose fat, and increase lean body mass. I say that's the holy grail. So we've been working on this for a number of years, expanding the number of foods we can use to give the people a greater opportunity to integrate these zone foods throughout their diet to do one thing, to basically reestablish satiety in the body. By reducing hunger, you basically activate AMPK, and once you activate AMPK, good things happen. You burn fat faster. You think and perform better. You slow down the aging process. Say, not a bad deal. So again, as we have this dilemma before us, our population is becoming massively overweight and therefore massively inflamed. What's our solution? We can give everybody Ozempic, which the drug companies would love to have, or we can basically say, we can make ultra-processed foods that allow you to basically retake control of your metabolism. And what benefits to you? You live longer, you live better.
You know, Dr. Sears, this is a great conversation because I do think everyone's kind of being saturated at this point with the Ozempics and the Wegovy's, and to know that there's almost using the foods that got you into the problem, that if you pay attention to the labels and use the zone foods, those foods can actually get you out of the problem without having to use some of these weight loss drugs and the other quick fixes that do have side effects.
Well, and that's why when trying to teach people how to eat, it basically goes usually in one ear and out the other. You've had years of experience knowing this in your clinical studies at Harvard. So the secret is saying, okay, I know what the answer is. Now can I construct food products that are fun to eat? If they're not fun, no one's going to eat them. That's the challenge. So now we have an alternative. We have the ultra-processed foods that are bad for you. We've got the lifelong drug. If you take, you basically lose weight. But the day you stop taking the drug, you're going to regain the weight. And now we have basically anti-inflammatory ultra-processed foods that are able to basically rebalance your metabolism. Rebalance your metabolism to make everything in your life more effective, because your metabolism, the efficiency of your metabolism, controls your future. So I think it's a very bright future and gives people now using zone foods basically the opportunity to retake control of their metabolism and retake control of their future.
Excellent. So Dr. Sears, if people want to learn more about the science of metabolism, where should they go? And if they want to explore some of the zone food options and, look there, where would you send them?
Well, first of all, let's be frank. They say science schmience. I know, say show me the foods. So if you want to see some of the foods, again, they can go to zoneliving.com. But you really want to understand, I believe, why they're working. That's why I would recommend going to drsears.com to understand the integral power that these foods have. And we have the clinical studies to say we're the only game in town that can lose fat and gain muscle. Not a bad deal.